Action.
That's good, that.
We are back. Hello. I think we are on episode 7.
Yep.
Yes, we're going to do an episode today all around being comfortable, being uncomfortable. If I said that right.
Yeah. Beyond the comfort zone.
Yeah, so getting out of your comfort zone. We also have a special guest today. We have
Hi,
Mark.
Hello.
Mark, aka the silent assassin.
I'm stuck with that for life now. That's it.
Oh,
Done.
yes, me too. PTSD.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, that was good, actually. That was quality.
So, Mark, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell the listeners who you are, what you do.
Yeah, so Mark is my name, obviously. In case you can't tell, I'm from Ireland originally. Moved to Manchester in June 22. Yeah, June 22. So we're here nearly 3 years now. I am an online coach as well, slash trying to be a half decent bodybuilder. And I also work full time as a security systems engineer. There's a mouthful. But yeah, I've been doing that for like 8 years now, 9 years. It's like just after I left school. Um, and yeah, that's kind of me.
Don't know how you fit it all in, Mark.
I know it's shocking, isn't it? Yeah, I try and do.
When you say it like that, you realize how much you actually do in a day.
Yeah, I mean, like I just make you make it work, like I suppose. It's like from the point of view of what I do for work, like my real job, as I say. People say that they're a coach and they have like a real job as well, which sounds terrible, but I only joke with that. But when I do like that job, to me is just it's quite easy to do. It's not something that like I actually enjoy the job. Like I don't mind going in and doing my job every day because, like I said, it's quite easy for me to do it. I'm just like when it comes to stuff like that, I think my brain just ticks that way. As
Mm.
in like circuits, relays, tech. I'm just it just clicks for me. But like obviously, then from a learning perspective, like with bodybuilding and the coaching side, there's progressive learning, which is a progressive learning with the job as well. But for like bodybuilding, I have to be very switched on to take on that information as well. So it is something that, like I said, having a job like that I enjoy it for one. Like it's not a chore for me to go in and do that. And then obviously have like coaching, bodybuilding that I love doing. They kind of balance each other nicely as well. So I think it works out well like that. But yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
when you
one of the
enjoy
reasons,
doing, go on.
no, go on, Kelsey, you go first.
I was just going to say, when you enjoy doing stuff, it's obviously going to feel like it is comfortable because it's not something that you don't like doing. So, work that you enjoy, training, because you get up, don't you, and train really early sometimes, like when we do. Amy, do you want to?
Yeah, I was just going to say the reason I thought this was a good topic to have you on with, Mark, is because you train like an absolute psychopath.
Unhinged individual.
So being outside of your comfort zone, especially for you, I imagine, I know you love training, but
Yeah.
I slowly watch, in particular on leg days, slowly watch your soul leave your body.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like the marker of how well that leg day has gone. But
Yeah.
that's always been something that I just enjoyed doing as well. I think it is like obviously pushing yourself to a level of discomfort, like being able to kind of go in and look at it like that. For me, like it sounds so deep at the end of the day, but it's when I'm going in to train, it's like I'm going in to progress today. Like that's it. There's no if, buts, or maybes about it. So it means I'm going to have to go to some other level of discomfort than I did the previous week. Then so be it. But to me, like it's progress or nothing. Like that's the way I've always approached training on some form or another. More so in the last couple of years, I would say like kind of the last 4 or 5 years, where I've been around more people who have a greater understanding of that, but also people who've been able to teach me that as well. Like actually taking a set to failure, like how to progress your lifts week on week, just how to like obviously be totally focused on the session in itself, as opposed to just going in and like faffing about. So I know I chat a bit of shit here and there in between, but like it doesn't take
I
away
feel
from
like
what
that's
I want to do.
influenced by us as well. Like,
Yeah,
why
but like it all kind of lends itself to like a better gym environment though as well. Do you know what I mean? Like things like that. So just being around good people like in the gym. as opposed to like I look at the people who train, obviously, at the times we train in the mornings, and even like not belittling anybody, but like normal people, as they call them, like
Mm.
not competitors, not bodybuilders, but even the people I see in there who are just coming in to train, like they're just there to do it. They're there to get it done. Like they're not faffing about. They're not, you know, pissing about on their phone for hours at a time. Like they're actually in there to train, and I think that really makes a gym. Like you could have the best kit in the world, but if it's got a shit atmosphere and there's terrible people in it, it's not going to be good. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you just won't be able to put yourself in the same position to progress than you would in a good gym environment. So I think that
Yeah.
makes a massive difference.
Yeah,
But I
your
think like
environment makes a huge difference, and you can feel that when you get there on a morning. Like if you're having
Mm,
a bit of a crap morning or you're stressed, as soon as you get in the gym on a morning, I think the environment that we're in with the people, it's just such a lovely experience. Even though
mm.
you're putting yourself through that horrific pain,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
still a really nice experience.
yeah. No, it is 100%. Like I said, I think the people and the atmosphere make a gym more than the kit. Obviously, like there's the nuance side of that. Like good kit, yeah, is a privilege. It's nice to have it, but would I prefer to train in a facility with better atmosphere and maybe lesser kit? Absolutely, I'll take that any day than the best kit in the world and a dreadful atmosphere. So
Yeah.
yeah.
it's like with anything though, like if you are not gonna feel discomfort, how can you be progressing? Like there's a difference, isn't there, between discomfort and like real pain, but it's impossible to actually be training and progress without some sort of discomfort. So it's kind of like pushing past that brain barrier, isn't it? Of this
Mm,
isn't comfortable, but I need to go to that level to be
yeah.
able to progress.
Mm.
Yeah. That's something that, so obviously you see Sam, who's trained with me now the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So train
For a second,
almost,
I didn't know he was coming back.
Is he not put
I,
off yet? Is he still okay?
he's
Bless
still
him.
okay. He's actually starting to get with it now a bit. Like, and he
Yeah.
is same thing.
What
Like
he's realised that he's going to die, that's how like that's how he has to train.
Mark's like, he's your comfort zone. You can see it from the distance. It's a little spot. That's your comfort zone. That's
yeah. Just keep
the
walking
lad.
further away from that, further away from that. Yeah. But I think it's cool to see because like he is leaning into it. Like someone who actually wants to see better from it as well. And it's not like he didn't train decently before that. It's just very different to how he used to train. But I think he made a good point even this morning there. He was talking about one of his mates who he basically like he's trying to not push him towards obviously the way we would train, but he's trying to tell him about it. And your man's not entertaining it, but he goes in and does his 4x12, same thing every week, same way, not making it. I'm trying to, explain that to him. And like if you don't push the body beyond the point of discomfort, it's never going to create an adaptation. It's never going to push any further than you are. And eventually you get to this point where if you're doing that same thing week in, week out for months, years even on end, which some people do, same reps, same sets, same load, same movement, it becomes like a regimented part of your body's day. And as far as your body's concerned, it's not doing anything different. So even still, what you find is people think they're maintaining at that level, and in actual fact, like they probably start losing muscle at some point. Because, like I said, it's almost like your body is too used to it. And in body's eyes, like it's actually not getting any stimulus because that's just completely negated now over time. So trying to teach them, like as I said, how to actually progress like that and go beyond that comfort barrier because especially on bigger movements, like he was not today. No, yeah, sorry, today we were on legs this morning, but like we were on the leg press this morning, and he was about to rack it. I could see it in his face, like he was going to rack it, and he got another 3 reps, but they were completely on his own. And then he actually failed on the third rep. I was like, right, rack it, done. So that is obviously the biggest part of it all. I say that to everybody. It is a mental thing, but I think it's a skill as well to be able to, push yourself to that next level of discomfort because
Yeah.
like you said, Kelsey, as well, it's like nothing progresses unless you actually want to kind of go to that area. So it has to be done at some point. But yeah, that's
Yeah, I guess it takes practice. Like you kind of have to do it a few times and get to
mm,
grips with, right, this is where I need to go, push
yeah,
past this point. And it goes into any aspect of life, doesn't it? Like how can you progress if you're just stagnant with where you're
mm,
at?
yeah, yeah. And the way I
And I
look at
think,
that as well is sorry, go on.
no, go on, Mark.
So the way I look at that, and I think this is a good topic as well because, like you said, it translates to kind of a lot of things that we do in life. So not just obviously from a training perspective, for us as well, obviously, like especially having done like preps and things like that, that is a different level of discomfort. But I
Yeah.
think that's like a chosen level of discomfort. Like we want to do that. Obviously, that's like we do that for the love of competing and for the love of bodybuilding. But I don't think any of us can say that we started training with the goal of being bodybuilders.
No.
You eventually found that and you got to a point where I was like, right, I need something different now to push me into that discomfort. And again, I think a lot of people who do it for that reason, like do it for the love of it, they go a lot further than those who obviously like the world we live in now is just caked with social media and like the gratification from social media. People who do it for the picture and they look shredded and they absolutely hate life outside of that picture. Like I'd never ever understood that ever, and I never will because it's like you're it is a choice at the end of the day. Like I said, it's a chosen discomfort, but what are you gaining from that? Like I never understood that. And I think as well, it makes it obviously a lot more enjoyable. There's obviously points of prep where you're like sucking the bottom of the barrel, you're just existing at times, like and whatever it may be. But I think as well, you can't take that as like an excuse to these people who just start a prep and are automatically like terrible person, like horrible people. It can't be that because it is a choice, like I said, at the end of the day. You just can't project that onto people either. If you're in that place where, like I said, you get to the end of prep, and for the last kind of 6 weeks, I was just very vacant. Like I wasn't an asshole or anything like that. I was just, if you see me sitting on the couch at night, you could almost see steam coming out of my ears trying to think of something to say because
Yeah.
it's just, like your brain doesn't compute.
Mm.
And it's a horrible experience, obviously, like it is. And that's just the reality of it. Fine.
Yeah.
But
And I think especially for people like us as well, who also have our normal jobs outside of that,
yeah, yeah,
when your job takes a lot, I know for me in prep, my job takes a lot of, my mental energy
mm,
really. So by the time I get home from work after training, cardio, my steps, sorting the dog, doing work, sometimes you just don't have the energy to do that. And yes, it's uncomfortable, but you know it's going to pass.
yeah,
That's the other
yeah,
thing. You do know it's
definitely.
going to pass.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
think it makes you strong though mentally when you've done a prep or something like that because it makes you realize, God, I can actually get through so
Mm,
much like more pushing past through that barrier of comfort, and then it makes you then able to translate into other areas of life, thinking, God, I'm so much stronger than I realized after you've come out the other end of a prep.
mm, mm. And again, I think that's the side of it as well, where, like I said, we none of us started training to be competitive. You know, I know very few people who start training to be competitors. I think you kind of have to look at the grander scale of it, where older people who I say older, like people who start bodybuilding late, like they start 27, 28, whatever, 29, with the goal of being bodybuilders. Fine, that's all well and good. Like people that have trained for years and now they've suddenly decided that they're going to pursue bodybuilding. That's obviously still like they might have trained years before that. They never started out with the goal of being bodybuilders. So they probably reached that stage in life now, even at a later age, where like, right, I need something different. But I think it's like a progressive mindset at the end of the day, not like, as I said, someone who says, yeah, I've never stepped foot in the gym, but I'm going to be a bodybuilder and I'm going to prep and I can do that, no problem. And then they would start and go, oh shit, this is, like, oh, well, I mean, they generally say, oh shit, if you do it right, because it's if you start a prep and you don't do a prep right, I mean, it's probably going to seem too easy at the end of the day, isn't it? So, but that's the whole idea. Like, it's supposed to be hard. Like, a prep is
Yeah.
supposed to be hard. So,
Yeah.
but
And like I say, nothing exciting comes from being in your comfort zone. Our comfort zone, our brain tries to keep us safe and stops us from pushing ourselves outside of that. And I imagine as a coach, you see a lot of that with people as well in lots of different areas of their life, really.
yeah, and I think like I said, in normal life, like I said, normal life again, but in normal life, I have seen that a lot, especially with lifestyle clients, obviously. But even myself, where, like I look at obviously the move over here, like that's a big jump out of your comfort zone.
Mm.
Like not only am I moving countries, but, or rather, not only am I leaving, like, the comfort of a parent's house, very little bills to pay, very little rent to pay, you're moving countries as well. And that's obviously like that was a big decision that both myself and Emma made together, where we were like, right, we for one, we just needed our own space, like obviously as we got older, but it was to do something different that wasn't just, the norm in the local town. I think that'll always stand to us in you know, when we go back home, because I will obviously go back home, like to, buy a house, get married, have kids, all that, because that's my home at the end of the day. Like that's, like I love it here, but the reality is it's not where, like home is where I'm from. No, but you know what I mean? Like home is where I'm from. Home is not,
Us, Mark, leaving us.
no, but you know what I mean? Like home is where I'm from. Home is not where I am at the
Yeah,
end of
yeah.
the day.
It's just a
But
chapter, isn't it? Because it's part of like pushing yourself out your comfort zone and being able
exactly.
to
Yeah.
expand your horizons. And then,
Yeah.
of course, like this will be a temporary, it'll be like while you're here, you'll be able to progress and push yourself, but then going back will
Yeah.
be like the future goal.
Yeah. I think it just gives you a different perspective on obviously life in general. Like as I said, living out of home is one thing, but then living, in a different country. Now, this is about as far as I'll ever go. Like I'm not, I'm not a mega home bird, but obviously there is times where you miss home. But I
Yeah.
just think about like if I was in, like I see a lot of my friends now or people from the local town who are living in Australia. I'm just like,
Wow. Yeah,
do
it's
you know,
got
I have my own limits with it, but in
Yeah.
different areas. Like I said, there's plenty of areas where I'm more than willing to go well beyond the comfort zone. But that is one thing that I probably wouldn't be able to, you know, because in my eyes, it's like that's great, fair play, enjoy that, but I don't see myself gaining anything from that if I did
Yeah.
something like that. It's just a bit too far for me. Um,
Mm.
but again, I think, like I said, the real life aspect of making a move out of your hometown, it doesn't
Yeah.
even have to be out of country, just out of your hometown, like seeing something different, getting a different perspective on things, and then obviously again, like we moved over here after the first couple of months, there was this fear of like, are we going to be able to stay here?
Yeah.
Like, are we going to be able to make this work? And there was like obviously that kind of the worry, I suppose is the right word to use about it. But then you kind of find your feet with it. There is a kind of cooling off period, obviously. Like this was within the first 6 months. I was like, after 3 or 4 months, I was like, are we going to be able to stay here? And
Yeah.
here we are nearly 3 years later. But, the perseverance of it as well, where it was like, things are looking a little bit touch and go here. Is it going to work out, etc., etc.? And then all of a sudden, it's just like not leaning into the fear of it and
Yeah.
just turn around.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. A lot of people, once they have that fear of failure, they tend to go back to the easy option. So I suppose
Mm,
for you, how did you power through that to make sure that you did stay and you did pursue it? Because I think lots of people aren't able to do that. You see that quite
mm,
frequently where things get hard and people think, oh no, I don't want to fail, so I'll just go back to what I know is comfortable and what I know is
mm.
safe.
So I think the way I looked at that is it is very much that like I don't want to go back to square one.
Yeah,
I want to get something from this, and I don't think 6 months was going to be long enough to see a mega turnaround and something like that.
yeah,
It was obviously like the point being was when I first moved over, pursue coaching full time. Okay, fine. That like from the financial standpoint, it just wasn't feasible. Like, so when we first moved over, we lived in Ancoats in the city, which ain't cheap, right? As I
no,
said, it ain't cheap. But understanding that, okay, financially, this is not going to be able to support me long term. Fair enough, right? So I need to do what I have to stay here. Like in that case, was obviously get a real job. Now, if I fell on my feet with the company I work for, it was quite nice in the end. Where, like, as I said, I can go in, I can do my job, I can go home, and there comes a point where, like, especially in work, for whatever reason, anytime I've I've only changed companies twice. Once in Ireland, and obviously the only place I've worked here is where I work now. But I've seemed to become this person who is quite heavily relied on in work and not realizing that, you kind of have your wits about you with things that you do as well. So suddenly you become this relied on person in work. And that's kind of like oh, what if I get this wrong? Like that's a fear thing as well. So it's like, do you lean into that and like become that reliable person, which at this point I have, like, and it was the same in the prior company that I worked for in Ireland. Like, whereas the first place I worked, it was people who have spent, well, bar maybe one, have spent their whole lives in their hometown, never done anything different. Like it was, this is the norm, this is what everybody else does, so this is what I'm going to do. And you get sucked into that kind of that mindset of the comfort zone. You know, in my head, I thought there would never be a time where I didn't work for that company. That's how deep that ran. It was like, yeah, I'm going to work for these for the rest of my life. I'm going to get a house in my hometown, and I'm going to follow the status quo that everybody else does. You know, and then suddenly one day I was just like, ah, I've had enough.
Freedom.
I've had enough. But you know what I mean? And that step with leaving there
Mm,
and getting a job at a different company, but going from somewhere that was not small, like they were a very busy company, but it was a lot of like domestic work and like, you know, small commercial stuff. And then all of a sudden I was going to this company who were solely Dublin based, which was like unheard of for me. I just worked in and around the area where I was. On occasion, I might travel to Dublin. This was solely Dublin based. Some of the stuff we did was like 10 times the size of the work requirements that we would have done at the other place, and then some. And I was going in with this fear of like, am I going to be able to do this?
mm,
You know, so I could have cut and ran, stayed where I was. But again, it was like, no, I need to do this. You know, I need to do this.
mm.
And then that was the next thing after was like needing to move, needing to do something different. So I think
Yeah.
that's again, like I said, when I talk about all aspects of life, but
Yeah.
I've seen people again from a coaching perspective. I've one client I had for a while who did something similar where he moved to Portugal, right? Which from Ireland is quite random. You know, like there's obviously the general consensus for people who a lot of us have moved here to the UK, or a lot of people go to Australia or Canada or the US or whatever. But that was kind of like a bit left field to do something like that. But he was like debating it, debating, debating. I was like, why don't you just do it? I said,
Mm.
worst that happens, it fails. And, you
Yeah.
know, like,
And that's the thing, what usually in those circumstances, what is the worst thing that can happen? If you're going to push yourself to actually attempt something new, it feels scary, but actually, what is the worst that can happen? You're always going to have a backup plan, aren't you? So
yeah,
if something doesn't work out, you do have something to fall back on. But I think if you don't do that, you can stagnate and you end up not pushing yourself to try new things because you feel so fearful of everything around
mm,
you.
yeah. And I think the talking about leaving that first place, that first company, there's probably like a tipping point where I could have gone either way.
Yeah.
You know, literally there was one whenever I started looking for another job, I think it was like January 21. So it was like we were still coming out of like COVID, which is wild. Like that was an insane time to live through, obviously. And things were very up in the air. So it was like, is this a good time to be looking for a job? You know, that's what I'm talking about, like that tipping point.
Yeah.
So it was like if nothing came of that, I would have just stayed where I was. I'd
Mm.
probably still be home. I wouldn't have done anything that I've done in the last, you know, 3, 4 years, whatever it may be. But like, obviously, wouldn't have met all the people I know now, yourselves, all the people I've met in between. But do you know what I mean? Like, they're the kind of things I look at where
Yeah.
I wouldn't have met 90% of the people that I know now. I wouldn't have done 90% of the things that I've done at this stage. You know, like it would have been just very similar and very straightforward. And God knows I probably maybe wouldn't even be bodybuilding
Yeah. And I
anymore.
think that that also links nicely in with what are the benefits of pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone? Because actually, when you do that, you are creating resilience, you're creating confidence, you're creating those experiences that you just wouldn't have if you chose to stay in that comfort zone and not challenge yourself in that way.
Mm, mm. I think it's
Definitely.
like a point that you make earlier. I think Kelsey, you said it, but it's like when you've done the prep, you know,
Yeah.
like you finish a prep and you're like, oh, I can do that. I did do that well. Or like, you know, on a base level of like you try and instill it in people, especially clients who, like, I completely get, obviously, people don't come in with the idea, especially from a lifestyle perspective, of being, you know, full blown 5 meals a day bodybuilder. I would never expect that of someone because that's not their goal, you know, but understanding that there is a level of, you know, right, I need to push myself to this little bit of discomfort to get the result I'm looking for. You know, I couldn't get it on my own. I couldn't get it doing what I'm doing, so something has to change. And it's something that I say to everybody. I'll always lean on the saying. It's like put this on my headstone, but nothing changes if nothing changes.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like if something's going to change, it has to be a bit uncomfortable. You can't just expect to do the same thing you've been doing for years and years, not seeing the result from it, and expect something different to happen. You know, it's like the definition of insanity.
Yeah.
That's literally it. That was the Einstein thing. Like
Yeah,
that is doing the same
absolutely.
thing, expecting a different outcome. Like it's never obviously that I think it swings and roundabouts because from a bodybuilding perspective, then where it's like we obviously do pretty much the same thing every day. But there is that caveat of the progression in training, you know, raising and lowering food, being in a deficit, being in a push phase, etc., etc. But in a general scope of things, we do the same thing every day, and that's obviously a routine thing as opposed to being stagnant with it. But like I said, you're trying to instill that in people and get them to realize like if they can do something, and if it's like the smallest win, right? The smallest thing different that they've done in a week, I'm like unreal, happy days, delighted to hear that. It's not like you don't belittle that thing. It could be something so small to like any of us that it's just so easy for us to do because obviously we're so regimented with routine and we're just used to it. But some of those
Yeah.
like something different, something that little bit discomfort, like give them a bit of credit for it. And I find that it just encourages people to go on a little bit
Yeah.
harder then and try something different the next week, or just be a little bit more like not pushing on massively every week, but like if it's just little bits at a time, just actually get them to realize like the longer you do that and the longer you can kind of push on to progress, the more you're going to get from it. And again, that's with anything, not just
It's
obviously
like building the
physiology.
habit. It's like if we already have the habit, it's dead easy because you're in the routine, you've got the habit, but actually building the habit,
Mm.
that's going to take some discomfort at first.
Yeah.
And I think especially within bodybuilding as well, because you are going from one extreme to the other all of the time, aren't you? So you
Mm.
are having to get comfortable being really lean and then pushing up past kind of where your comfort zone is. So I feel
Mm.
like when you start bodybuilding, you do become comfortable with the uncomfortable things because
Yeah.
every area of it you are dealing with something a little bit different, but that can make people quite uncomfortable.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I think you find that out more times than you probably realize as well within bodybuilding. And obviously, I like heavily talking about bodybuilding, but it is a good example of
Yeah.
like pushing yourself beyond different limits because, like you said, there's always extreme ends of it where, the tail end of a prep, that's difficult. This year, as I found out, like the tail end of an off season, very difficult. And it has
Yeah,
given me a new appreciation for dieting and
both
prep.
ends.
Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it's just I've pushed things in the past, but I've never pushed things this high for this long. I
Yeah.
say things, I mean just mainly food.
Yeah.
Like
Such
there
a
was a
reward though, like you feel satisfied from knowing that you push yourself.
exactly, and I think from like you know there is to get to a point where you've never been before. Obviously, takes new levels of discomfort as well. And for me, like this year as well, like pushing food,
Mm.
like I said, I've never pushed it that hard for that long. And since I came off stage, so I did the last time I prepped was September 23. It was start September 23. So I've been off season ever since. So over a year and a half now with one. I think I dieted for 10 weeks in maybe April last year. Um, but it wasn't like a super aggressive diet. It was just I pulled off about 15, say 16, 17 pounds, whatever it was in 20 weeks. Just give myself a bit more room to keep pushing. But when I got to like then November this year, and all of a sudden I was still pushing food up, still pushing food up, and I got to November and I was like, shit, this is this is dreadful.
I
Like
remember
this
you
is
saying to me,
absolute.
I'm sick of eating. I was like,
Oh
shut
yeah,
the
I'm just
fuck.
absolutely sick of it. I'm not too bad now. Like week two of health phase and maintenance, and I pull food down about
Oh,
400 calories, but it's just like a breath of fresh air.
yeah, but
Don't get me wrong, I've hints of hunger here and there, but I'm still like putting
that's
foot down.
nice, isn't it? Because I bet you
But
feel
that's
like,
the
thank
thing.
God for that.
I know, and that's why I was almost like thrilled when I was pulling food down. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
made it. But again, from like it was just pushing food for so long, and then I hit this brick wall at like the start of November where I was like just staring at meals for 10 minutes
Yeah,
before
I
I'd eat
feel
them.
it. I feel
But
it.
the point being
I
was,
don't feel it now, but I felt it like the end of my last off
mm,
season.
yeah,
The first like month of prep, it was just I wasn't even hungry. It was just thank God, thank God.
I know. There's light at the end of the Tupperware bowl, But I think as well, it's like I
Right
said,
at the
it's
end of the supper.
yeah, that's it, yeah, that's it. It's like you're getting to the bottom
Not heard
quicker.
that.
You know
I
what I mean?
think we'll put that on your headstone instead.
Yeah, there you go.
Right at the end of the Tupperware bowl.
That was ad hoc. I mean, I
I
absolutely stole
will
that from the
finish
spot.
this meal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's the way I have to look at it. But like I said I'd stare at a meal for 10 minutes, but I still eat them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like I would
See,
never.
I still haven't reached that point. I've probably said this to both of you, but I am a bottomless pit. My nana's always said it's like stuffing a couch. So even when my food was at like 4,000, I just haven't reached that point yet. I don't think I've ever reached that point. So that's going to be a kind of a mental challenge for me when
Mm,
I do eventually get there,
mm.
where it is a challenge to get food in.
But I think that's like that. Having the constant hunger can be a blessing and a curse, obviously. Where I think we look at it from again a prep perspective, it's easy to distract yourself, I think, when you're hungry. But when you have zero appetite and you still have to sit down and eat 5, 6 meals a day, that's like that is a new level of discomfort for me that I found this year.
Mm.
So I
Mm.
think it goes back to that. Like I said, you're always looking to do something different. Nobody seeks out the fear of eating a meal. You know, like I never thought that would be a real thing, but here we are. And
I was
like
rocking in
obviously,
the
Yeah.
corner with these Tupperware, like,
literally, and just
It's hard, but
no.
then you have to plan everything so well because if you're not digesting that food, it's pointless. And then I
Yeah.
used to feel a little bit like I would be in my session and I'd feel a bit sick. I couldn't drink EAAs in my session even because anything sweet was just making me
Mm,
feel
mm,
nauseous. And then it became like at a point where it just was affecting even like my training. And that's when I think we were starting prep anyway, so it was fine.
yeah,
But you have to manage everything so perfectly, don't you? With like meal timings, if you've missed a meal, then you're in a mess.
yeah, yeah.
You can't
That's
miss.
literally it, and that's you become like with two opposite ends of it with prep. You get to a point in prep where you're almost clock watching to your next meal,
Mhm.
but then in an off season, like you're clock watching to make sure you don't miss a meal because that hunger has escaped you. You
yeah.
Mm.
know, like in prep, it was like perma hungry. Right, when's my next meal? But then it's like suddenly, 2.5 hours have gone by. I have no inclination to be hungry here, but shit, I have to eat a meal in half an hour. So that's again, there's two opposite ends to that. But like I said, it's a new level of discomfort that I've never felt before. I've pushed food high, but never that high for that long.
Yeah.
Like and to see it was almost like a badge of honor when I seen, like over 5,000 calories on a training day. I was like, yes, I've made it now. I've made it.
Till
And
it
then
hit you.
that was it until it hit me, until I had my first meal. I was like, oh, you
It,
know
you know,
what?
it takes a few months of like pushing, and then after a few months, you think, oh, this is great. And then after a few months, you're like, oh my God,
That's literally what it was.
it builds up.
I was fine, and then November, brick
Yeah.
wall. I was just like, oh my God, how do I do this?
Mm.
But again, it's not like you sack it off. You're looking for that next level. So for me, obviously, it's just trying to put on more muscle tissue. Like I'm heavier now in a bodybuilding sense anyway than I've ever been. Not actually, I've never been as heavy as the heaviest I was like when I was younger. But from a bodybuilding perspective, like I'd never seen 260 on scales before. Now I saw it for one day only,
One day.
and it escaped me then after that. It was 260. It was 260 on the nose.
Just one day.
260.0. I was like, yes. And the next day I was like 258 point something again. I was like, ah no. So but that was like so long of pushing and pushing and pushing. And I think obviously not purely chasing the scales because that's how things get out of control. But it was, I don't know, like 25, 30 pounds over the guts of 30 weeks, which was like, that was a fair chuck to push that anyway, to actually get myself there. But I think just being a bit more regimented with things than again I ever have been. Like I've treated the off season as strictly as I treated the prep,
Yeah.
which is something I'd never done in the past. Obviously, I didn't like totally go off the rails with it, or like I wasn't not on point, but I've been more like on it than I ever have been. And again, me realizing that, like I said, to get to that next level, that's just what it's going to take.
Yeah.
Like
More
just that's
comfortable days, and
well,
even
that's it. Like
season, like people think, oh, season's like off, I'm not gonna have to make as much effort and try as
mm,
hard. But no, that off season's so comfortable if you're doing it
yeah,
right.
exactly, and that's it. You don't seek out, for it to be uncomfortable. It's just you reach a point where you realize, okay, right, well, I still have more to go. I still have more to gain or grow or whatever it may be. And now I'm like looking at it, going, oh, this is getting tough. I'm like, this is going to get really tough. you know. But again, you could shy away from it and call it early, like a lot obviously people do, where they're like,
But you're just jumping in.
oh, that's it, yeah, just like keep, you know, nose diving, not even pencil, just nose diving into it. Um, but again, a lot of people, that's where people will turn the opposite direction and start dieting again. You know, these people who are in a like perpetual state of bulking and dieting, 12-week bulk, 12-week diet. Like you're stuck in
Yeah,
dead space.
no. I think
But
I
that's
used
it.
this
Like you're just
analogy on the podcast, but it's literally like you get in your car and you're going to go somewhere and you kind of like get halfway and then you think, oh, I've changed my mind, I'm going to go
you
back.
turn
And then you
around.
just
Yeah,
spend the whole day or however long just literally getting nowhere because
yeah.
you've not committed to one destination. You just
Mm,
go all in
mm.
between, get nothing out
Just
of it.
yo-yo between the two of them.
Mm.
That's what a lot of people do. But
And I think
again,
for
like
some people as well, though, especially, I don't know what it's like for men, I can't comment on that side of things, but a lot of women struggle when they are putting that body fat on as well. So there's that other
mm,
element of people
Another
starting
uncomfortable.
comfortable with how they look, and then that
mm,
makes them feel
mm,
a little bit insecure rather than embracing actually, this is what you need to do for your goal and
mm.
embracing who you are. And as we often say, it's the least interesting thing about you, like what
Yeah,
people see from the outset. So,
yeah.
it's getting comfortable with that. You know that even your look is going to be to the extremes at some point
Mm,
if you are bodybuilding as well.
yeah, yeah. I think for me, it'll always I definitely get that. And there is times where now I'm like I said, I'm still holding in around like high 250s, and I look at it sometimes and I go, because now suddenly I have this thing where I'm in health phase, and obviously I'm gonna start getting softer. Or like, am I gonna start getting softer? And then I start looking at, like I brush my teeth at night and I'm like pinching the fat on my hips and stuff, and I'm like, but the problem, right? I say the thing for me is when I was younger. So when I was like well, between I think when at my worst when I was like 16, right? Um, I was oh, in around 138, 140 kilos when I was 16. So just consider that for a second. So I'm like 115 now.
Mm,
So you think another 25 kilos, but I was just like call a spade a spade. I was just fat, right, as a kid, and that there was a lot obviously that went on into the background of that. That wasn't just something that happened overnight,
yeah.
but that was like a culmination of like 2 years of, you know, essentially like not leaving the house, like
Mm,
just in a very, very dark space for a long time. And I think for me now, when I look at that, especially this last couple of months where, like I said, I'm pushing myself to a point where I've never been before, in my head, I'll always be that kid.
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like that's a spot where I definitely have struggled with it.
Mm,
But again, I kind of have to rationalize with myself and say, like I've just said there, right? I was still 25 kilos heavier when I
yeah.
was, 10 years younger. So it's like that's something that I toy with a lot, and there's always something that weighs on my mind. But then like I think the kind of what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. The reality check, I suppose, for me obviously is like constantly taking my checking pictures each week. And then you look at them, you compare them, you go, oh, my perception of it is very skewed. Our
Mm,
perception of ourselves is always going to be skewed, no
yeah.
matter what. Like, and again, that goes both ends of the perspective where prep, I was 10 days out. I remember it and I'll never forget it. I was 10 days out and I was fat. That was it. That was it. There was no telling me otherwise. Like I was 25 weeks out, I was fat, I was overweight. You couldn't tell me any different. And I look at it now, I go, Jesus, what was wrong with me? Do you know what I mean? But Ryan, who was coaching me at the time, we were in the gym and I was doing rounds after every session at this stage, and that was it. I was having a full on meltdown. But I was talking to him about it. I literally took a picture of me when I was hitting the most muscular in one of my rounds. He literally he didn't even say it, and he just showed it to me. I was like, okay, okay, crisis averted. You
Yeah, but I
know,
think as well you see yourself every day in a prep. So other people, like
mm,
I was lean, but I didn't realize I was as lean as I was. So I kept saying
yeah,
to Dad, like, "Do you think I'll be ready?" Whereas you guys are all like, "You are so lean. This is."
yeah. I honestly like in person. I've seen very few people who are more peeled than you were peeled. Like genuinely, like I was like, what the fuck? Excuse the language, like, but that's literally all I could think when I first when I I don't know, was it just after either after or just before your first show? I was like, what? Like insanely peeled, like. But that's like you said, it's you're asking the question, am I going to be ready?
Yeah.
Whereas in your head, you're like, I don't know, I don't know. But like I said, it's 10 days out of your mind, really, at that stage. Like you haven't got the wherewithal, your perception of yourself is completely skewed. As it can be most of the time, but obviously just more so in the prep, which I think is something that a lot of people aren't prepared for either. you
Yeah.
know. But I think that's why it's so important, like that. I had Ryan to basically tell me to cop on, get a grip. Like I said, he didn't even say it. He just pointed the picture at me. I was like, all right, okay, I see what you're saying. But to kind of come back to what I was saying about me, I'll always be that 16-year-old in my head because when I see the scales go up, you do get moments of wobbles where you're like,
Mhm.
is it all going to pot again? But it's not, obviously, because it's like so far skewed from the person that it was then. you
Yeah.
know.
And I think it's really important that people hear that though, Mark, because actually, that just shows how much you have had to work to push through those fears
Mhm.
of failure, those fears of judgment, all of those things that go on for you that stem from way back, but that you're still able to very much push through that to work towards your goal. And when you have to do that and change your mindset around something, that's never comfortable. But again, to
Yeah.
get where you want to be secure enough to do that once you do that work, then you are able to do that. But
Mm.
the reason I laughed earlier was because when you were saying about putting on weight,
Yeah.
when you sent me that message yesterday, so just to clear things up for people, there's a very random moment yesterday morning where I needed a stretch.
Oh,
So Mark and Ali very kindly stretched me. But you messaged me, didn't you, saying, I've just noticed the off-season roll to the back of my
yeah.
arm. It's like,
Yeah,
so
because it
the
was,
thing
yeah,
from that video is that for you.
yeah. The thing I took from that was, Jesus, my head is fat. You know, like that was it. Because it was, oh yeah, I think Charlotte took that one. So obviously, Kelsey, you were there, and I couldn't see the back of my head in your video.
I
But then I
can't
seen
say I
Charlotte's
didn't
video, and
see it.
that was it. I was like, oh no, so many head rolls, so many head rolls. But I don't know. I just judge that as a good off season, really. So
Yeah,
that's my
absolutely.
marker for a good off season. But yeah, I think that's it. Like as I said, your perception is always skewed, and to be able to and I've seen a lot of people who are, they start in a difficult position or what, their own area of struggle, be that if they're massively underweight or massively overweight, but then you have opposite ends of the spectrum to deal with where, there's the fear of people putting on weight, and then obviously that idea of, I think, not to put like, say one is easier or one is more difficult, but I think coming from a point of view of where obviously being overweight and you want to see something change there, it not again not easier, but I suppose it happens a bit more kind of I don't know what the word is I'm trying to think of now.
Like gradual, do you mean?
Yeah,
Like
like I
gradual.
think it just kind of happens more naturally, I suppose is the word I'm looking for.
Mm.
Where obviously you tend to see people who with a lot of, I wouldn't say eating issues or stuff like that. They're obviously just bred into them when they're younger and like are just severely underweight. Now, obviously, there could be 101 different things going on in the background there, even from a medical perspective. That's all well and good. But getting the people to push that limit of putting on weight is a lot more difficult than obviously getting people to lose weight. Because
Yeah.
we just live in a culture where, like, the goal is to be skinny. Like that's what you're sold all over Instagram. And obviously,
Mm.
especially for females, it is obviously a massive, like I would say, an issue for females is like, again, that is different for me where I'm quite numb to I call it the nonsense that you see on social media now,
Yeah.
where you'll see, like, if you look at my Instagram, I go on and post my training, I get off. Like
Yeah.
that's it. I don't doom scroll. I don't deal with a lot of it anymore because I just can't. I haven't the patience for it anymore because I think more than annoys me, I think it angers me as well at times. Like the things that people are trying to sell you now, and
Yeah.
especially in the coaching industry, where it is just a game of who can be, you know, the sneakiest marketing, I suppose, to get you in the door.
Yeah.
And the way it's sold to, as I said, the way it's sold to females is like it's so much worse than the way people try and sell to males. or even the kind of, the perception of what a female should look like. How
Yeah.
it's sold on Instagram, I think is horrendous nowadays. It's like if you
Yeah,
want
and
to,
that's we try to do a lot around that actually, don't we, Kels?
mm,
Because obviously we're huge pioneers for actually embrace the positives of whatever stage that you're in.
mm,
And actually there are so many benefits to putting on weight. You know,
mm,
the energy that you have, how good you feel. And like you said, when you're in a massive deficit, you're vacant. Sometimes you are
mm,
extremely vacant.
yeah,
You can't invest in the people that you are with because you just don't have the energy to do it. And
yeah,
again, you know you've got to be selfish for that period of time. Actually, when you move into putting on weight and you can be so present. I mean, I know I'm a little bit like a Labrador anyway, but I'm a bit like a Labrador on speed. Once I get
yeah,
into
yeah, yeah.
I've
When
got
you're
all
when
the
you're in that
all
normal
the food
stage,
in us.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of things I actually really enjoy about putting on weight,
Mm.
to be
I
honest.
think again, when you look at it from a female's perspective, like long term, it's not good for anybody to be, borderline stage lean year round or like extremely lean year round. But obviously, especially from a female's perspective, and again, something I have such an irk with now in the coaching space is like people who just have no comprehension of female physiology whatsoever. And like I said, they're trying to get them in the door, get the transformation picture, and ship them off on their way. Or that, or they just string them along for months and months and months at a time, and it absolutely ruins them. Like again, from a physiological perspective, like just not having an understanding of what long-term effects that can have, obviously from like hormonal health. Like again, something you see, like I'd say disgustingly often is these, like females who are with coach for X amount of time. It's even just from a lifestyle perspective. A woman I was talking to in one of the buildings we look after recently posted about it on my story, but she was just like a lifestyle person, like a lifestyle client, and like hadn't had a period in like 6 months after an 11-week, 12-week diet or something. But again, the first point I made about that was, well, why didn't you say something? Oh, well, I didn't feel comfortable bringing it up. But I was like, what do you mean?
I mean, that should be the starting point with your coach that you can talk to them about things like that.
But that's it. And I think even from a general intake perspective, like
Yeah.
there's no question about, you know, any pre-existing conditions. Do you get regular cycles? Are you using contraception?
Careful.
Anything like that.
The coach should specifically ask about the time of the month and how that's working. Like that's a massive factor in any fat loss and any
Yeah,
kind of coaching requirements. You would need to know that. So
yeah, yeah. And that is something that, like I said, it's just trying to sell, especially to females, like I'll get you in the best shape of your life, hell or high water,
I
could be the end of you. But
period.
yeah, it's like, oh, you'll be in the best shape of your life, and then in small print, you're probably going to feel horrendous for 6 months after because I've
Yeah.
no idea what I'm doing outside of that.
Yeah, you may
Like,
diet for 6 months and then you'll need to recover for 6 months, so it's
yeah,
pointless.
yeah, but that's
Yeah.
it. That's literally it. And it does. It, as I said, it's not even annoys. It like angers me almost to the point where it's like people just nowadays they want to get people in the door, get the transformation, and get them out as quickly as they can. No comprehension for general health whatsoever.
But for
It's just
lifestyle clients, it shouldn't be extreme enough to be
no,
having to push like
no,
that because
no.
that's something that can happen on a prep at the end of a
Mm,
prep, but not
yeah,
a lifestyle
no,
client doing a diet.
no. And I think even when you look at it from an individual's perspective, obviously everyone's different. Like you could probably find a handful of people out there, especially again, females' perspective. You could probably find a group of females out there who they could lose a kilo and all of a sudden they lose their cycle, right?
Mm.
That's like inter-individual circumstance. Doesn't mean they're totally out of whack. There could be 1,001 reasons why that's happened. It doesn't mean their hormones have crashed or anything like that. It could just be an individual byproduct of what happens there as soon as they start to lose weight. But like you said, it's like why are you pushing a lifestyle client to that extreme?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? The key there is lifestyle. Like it should be something that they can incorporate into their general setup. Not okay, yeah, fair enough. You might do, as I would do, like a short and sharp diet. If there's body fat to pull off, or if there's a bit of body fat, even still, my big thing now, especially with lifestyle clients, is I try to promote more so like fuel and performance. Because what you often find is when you take people in, like their training is underwhelming is the wrong word. It seems like I'm belittling them, but you know what I mean. Like their training isn't that anywhere near like a good level. They just kind of go about what they've always known how to do. So what we
Yeah.
do now is like, be it male, female, indifferent, right? Is lean into, like I said, fuel and performance, training better in the gym, getting stronger over time. Not necessarily like I'm not looking for you to pile on weight. I'm also not looking for you to lose a ton of weight. You know, like I said, if you actually find that you can nail those basic factors, you probably find what happens with a lot of people is they enter that kind of almost like a recomp factor where like their weight doesn't really fluctuate. Yeah, they might go up or down a kilo or two, but that weight can be drastically different just by
Mm.
making simple changes around, like I said, diet, training, performance, things like that. And again, that's not like fuel performance, oh, here, eat thousands and thousands of
Mm.
calories. Clean up your diet, have
Mm.
adequate amounts of energy during the day, eat like far majority, at least anyway, whole food sources, things like that. You know, like stuff that's actually going to fuel you in the gym, and then you'll see a
Yeah.
positive return from that. Not like crash diet, great, got my picture, see you later.
And I
No,
suppose that's a really good way for people as well, isn't it? To slowly take those steps to allow themselves to be uncomfortable rather than
yeah,
that sharp, what is it? Sharp, think
short and
sharp,
sharp.
short, I can't say it. Short,
Yeah,
sharp, sharp.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. It's the initial shock to the system though as well. Where look, I mean, some people lean on that and it works really well for them. But you kind of obviously have to feel it out from our perspective of if you try and get someone to do too much too soon,
Yeah.
they're not going to be able to handle it.
It's not
So it's when you
sustainable though, is it? Because it'll be okay for a few weeks
exactly,
and then that's like the end because they can't do it. They've had enough.
yeah,
They hate it and they don't want to do
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. So it's like that's the thing. You have to get a feel out factor where you can't just throw someone in the deep end straight away. I think it's like anything. Obviously, there was like again bringing it back to normal life where there was months where we were debating the move here, you know, or like months where, like I said, I was debating changing the job. It's not like a now. Obviously, you take the plunge at some point or another. Like you do have to jump in eventually, but there will be some procrastination. You just don't let it kind of hang around for too long because that's what can, as I say, can tip the scales between actually doing something progressive or
Yeah.
staying in one spot. But I think as well that just works in my experience anyway. That works a lot better for the majority of people.
Yeah.
Whereas like some people, like I said, they immediately lean into that discomfort. Fantastic, great. They get the result and they keep that up and it becomes part of their lifestyle. But then what you almost find with that is trying to get people to be not as extreme. You know, like as again, like they get too lean, they push the envelope too far, they ruin themselves and they can't progress in the gym. They're suddenly they hate their training. They're obsessed with how much food they're putting in their body, and then it becomes an issue to try and get them to actually gain some weight. So it is like a fine balance to strike, obviously, especially in that space. But again, just trying to get people to push themselves a little bit harder from the get go, not as I said, you know, nose diving into it. You have to automatically like just start living like a bodybuilder, eat 5 meals a day, you know, X, Y, and Z regimented routine. So I think it can be, you know, like it's the way I look at it is it is goal dependent. Do you know what I mean? If you're coming to me as a lifestyle client, fine. That's the way I'm going to treat it. That's the way I'm going to, you know, like I'm realistic about what you can and can't do based on, say, the feedback or the way you talk about the goal. You know, like, and then you try and kind of hone that and nurture it a little bit and try and get them to be a little bit more progressive with it and push them a little bit harder in their comfort zone. But like at the opposite end of that is if someone comes to me and says, right, my goal is to, I want to like legit be full on bodybuilding. I want to do an off season and then my goal is to prep. Fine. I will treat you like a bodybuilder. Do you know what I mean? I will tell you how it is. And I'm not trying to be rude or I'm not trying to be, you know, like I'm not trying to deter you from it. I'm just giving you the realistic insight into this is what it takes. You know, like that's what it's going to take. It's going to be eating the 5 meals a day. It's not missing a meal. It's doing cardio. It's doing steps. Training when you're tired. You know, like this sort of thing. Like pushing yourself to a limit. Not sacking off a training session because you know you're a little bit tired when you wake up in the morning. Stuff like that. So being kind of, I suppose, self awareness is the right word for it. You know, like in I understand from a bodybuilding perspective you know what's needed, and if that's what you want to do, fine. You need to understand that and the levels of discomfort that it's going to require. But also, like I said, from a lifestyle perspective, no matter what, it's going to be some form of discomfort for you to experience because
And I
it's
think
not
like
something you're used to.
anything. it is understanding that you're going to feel that fear and you're going to have to do it anyway.
Yeah,
That's
100%.
if you want to achieve something, 9 times out of 10, you are going to have to go through that period of feeling
Mm,
uncomfortable, no matter what that is, because
mm,
nothing that you want is going to come that easy to you. So
mm.
there are usually skills that you are going to have to develop to push yourself to that point.
Yeah. I think the biggest factor, like, or the biggest thing I found over that is time. Like that's again, people come in and they want it in, they want to undo 10 years of bad habits in 12 weeks. It's never gonna happen. Like, and that's another thing that people need to be realistic about as well, is understanding what the kind of time it's going to take for that. You know, I reposted earlier actually, James Hollingshead, he had a good post earlier on, but it was, I can't remember obviously word for word, but he was talking about X amount of days since my first bodybuilding
Ah,
show.
yeah, so
See this? It was like X amount of days until I won an overall. You know, 30 something thousand meals between that time.
yeah.
All this, and I read it, and I was like, yeah, that's exactly what it's about. Do
Yeah,
you know
it's
what I
a
mean?
long,
Like that's,
long kind of goal, isn't it? It's not just going to happen overnight.
yeah, and that's,
People need to choose like, what is this level of discomfort based on that?
yeah, yeah. And you look at it and you read that and you break it down in numbers like that. I thought that was a deadly post. Honestly, that was one of the best things I've ever read. And when obviously you look at it from a not just a bodybuilding perspective, but anything. Like if
Mm.
it's time, time is like the key factor in anything in terms of progression. Like you
Time and
have to be willing.
consistency.
That's it. That's it. Yeah. And I think that's the main point of the post is like he's eaten those 5, 6 meals a day for the last nearly 20 years now. Like he's been training, he's done X amount of shows. It was this amount of time since he was last on the Olympia stage. This sort of thing, like it is something that people forget about massively. Is like you just have to give something time. You can't expect it to just fall in your lap. Like I said, after 10 years of bad habits, and all of a sudden after 12 weeks, you expect your entire life to be turned around. Like don't get me wrong, look, it happens for some people, right? It does happen for some people. They touch on something that they never knew they had, and all of a sudden they fall in love with that process and they become completely engrossed in it. Fine, but for a lot of people, it's not going to happen. Like it doesn't happen like that. So it's just being realistic with you know the upper end of what can actually happen in that time period, or rather the upper end of how long that time period has to be to get to where you want to be. So time is the answer to everything. you
And
know
are you taking on clients at the moment, Mark? If anyone's looking for a coach,
yeah, I'm always, as I said, our doors are always open. You can just message me on Instagram, but
we'll take you.
yeah, do. But I think that comes back to the point of like I don't market it as much anymore
No.
because it's just not me. And I take nothing away from the people who do well at it and who market themselves well. And like one of my closest friends, Keen, right? He's brilliant at it. He is brilliant at it. And he's actually, I'm knowing him on a personal level. Like he's not someone who just gets people in and gets them out. Like Keen is fully invested in the process and he can lean into that. Fair
Yeah.
play to him, right? And it's his base income. He is a coach full time. Like
Mm.
obviously there comes a point where like you have to make money at the end of the day. But he has got to it where he still loves it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? A lot of people get lost in the financial side of it, with
Mm.
especially from now, obviously the last number of years, all
Yeah.
these like marketing coaches that people have and this, that, and the other. But like I said, I don't market it as much anymore. And what I found is the people who come to me now, especially in the last year, like they're all still on with me for one, so retention is a lot higher. But
Mm.
they're also all people who they just do what they need to do in a week.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There's very few people who, for one, like I said, have dropped off, but they immediately come in. They're like, "This is what I want to do." And that,
Mm.
again, I have some bodybuilding clients, but I have a lot of lifestyle clients.
Yeah.
But they just get on with it. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
I just think there may be people who are listening to us chatting and think, actually, do you know what? That style and how you kind of talk about the things that you do would benefit them. So I just think
Mm.
it's useful for people to know
No,
that you are.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But like I
because a
said,
lot
it's
of
just
coaches, like, sorry, Mark, go on.
no, go on, no, you're right. Go ahead.
I was gonna say a lot of coaches like now, like they do market themselves so good. It doesn't mean that they're a good coach. It just means like they're good at marketing, and
Mm.
that's like not the right reason to join a coach.
No, exactly, exactly, and that's the thing. I just couldn't. I just couldn't do it anymore. And a couple of lads are much the same, where they still have clients and they still coach, but they
Mm.
just let it happen kind of organically. And
Yeah.
it's like I said, my Instagram is just training footage
Yeah.
and the odd sprinkle of me in normal clothes on holidays and stuff like that. But it's like, if what I post resonates with you, or if what I talk about in my post with my training resonates with you, great, fantastic. You know, if it doesn't interest you, fine. Because, like I said, the people who've come to me in the last year, especially, they're just grafters. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's not just bodybuilding. Like I said, they have lifestyle clients as well, but they just get after it. Like, there's a one of my, I actually went to school with him, and he lives in Australia now. But I've never seen anyone with a work ethic like it that isn't a bodybuilder,
You've
right?
spoke to me about him before,
I
actually.
feel like I have, yeah. I've never seen anything like it in my life, right? He moved to Australia in September, I think. He was living up north in like Darwin, something like that, and then he moved to Sydney around November. Um, but he's the area that he works in is like aviation finance, which is really random as well. I don't know anybody who does this, right? But he took on basically an internship role at the start of December. And for 3 weeks, right? I mean, no exaggeration, he was working 16 hours a day for 3 weeks, right? Don't get me wrong. And he was even holding his own hands up, right? He missed meals and rather missed meals, didn't eat shit, missed meals. But he would still either get out and do some cardio or he would get out and get a session in where he could, even if it was 45 minutes an hour, right? And he would be like, his check-ins were like, I didn't do this, I didn't do this, I didn't do this. I go, yeah, but you need to stop. I need to look at what you're actually doing. I said, you're working 16 hours a day. You're sitting at a computer for 16 hours a day for free, mind you. So it's an internship, yeah, for free. But all with this idea that he wanted to build his reputation in Australia, in that area, in
Yeah.
that aviation finance. And now he's in a job that he actually really enjoys. Do you know what I mean? And he's all of a sudden he's come back down from this level of like absolute insanity is
Mm.
all the word, the only word I could use for it. Like it was
That's
insanity.
amazing.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's
It's
Like I
how
said,
sacrifice for long-term gain as well, isn't it? It's not about that
that's
instant
exactly what it is.
gratification. It's
Yeah.
work, work, work to get where you need to be and want to
and,
be.
and being uncomfortable for that period of time, literally
Yeah.
being so uncomfortable to get then where he is now.
Hmm. But that's
Amazing.
exactly it. As I said, it's he was doing that, but he'd get in and get some cardio done, or he'd do a training session, even if it was 45 minutes an hour, but he'd still be checking in saying, I didn't do this, I didn't do this, I didn't do this. Oh man, you need to stop. I said,
Yeah.
because you're gonna ruin yourself here. I said, look, that's a means to an end. And he even said it when he took the internship. He was like, it's not forever, it's for 3 weeks. I was like, that's fine, you understand that. But immediately still after that, he was constantly looking to progress himself. Even before he started that internship. But that was like, as I said, a level I've never seen in someone who like isn't a bodybuilder in terms of work ethic. And now, like I
Yeah.
said, he's in a job that he
That
enjoys.
is crazy.
I was absolutely insane. I genuinely have never seen anything like it. And you know, people who talk about they've worked 16-hour days, but I've actually seen someone work 16-hour days for 3 weeks. And to me, that's insanely long as it is, never mind, you know, doing it for a couple of days.
Yeah.
So to be able to do that and like he was sleeping like 4 or 5 hours a night, you know, which in the grand scheme of things is horrendous.
Yeah.
But now he's back in a good place. But what we found was that was still hanging over him like for weeks after. He was still only sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night because he was like, I'm not stressed. I'm this, that, and the other. Oh, yeah, but you're probably still stressed from that 3 weeks and your body's still trying to come back to baseline, you know.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's just people like that. Like when I marketed it like there was no tomorrow, I never got people like that. Don't get me wrong, I got some grafters. I got some absolute great people that have come and gone over the years of coaching, but I've never seen anything like that in someone who, and like I said, even the way he still talks now, like he's very like knowledgeable when it comes to like trading. So like not like the forex nonsense you see. Like I think Kelsey, you do a lot of this, yeah. Like I call it actual trading, like not like the these people who think they're going to get rich in a week off the market and trading or whatever it is, like this sort of crack, but like actual trading. like he is incredibly knowledgeable about it. And the terms he puts on the check-in when he talks about it, like he talks to me about it, right? I'm like, that's great. I say, this is fantastic. I have no idea what you're talking about.
I
But
want to
unreal.
meet him.
I will actually put you on to him, Kelsey, because he has like a Twitter and everything where I'm not even going to try and use the terms that he uses. But
He'll want me to meet him in Australia, but
he
contact.
posts trades and stuff like that, and like his strategies for trades and things like that, and all this sort of thing. But it's something that he's constantly trying to learn about and constantly trying to progress at. Now he's doing it years, but the way he talks about it is like he's so invested in it, and he puts so much time and effort into it, and even in work still, which is a completely different area. He is just fully invested in what he does and looking to constantly progress. But
I feel
like,
like him and Kelsey would get along really well because she talks to me about stuff like that and it goes over my
yeah,
head.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I'm saying because I know obviously I've seen you post
What's
sometimes about
talking
stuff
about?
like that, but again, I like it means nothing to me. I have no idea what it means, right? With the terms that he uses, but I want unreal man because the way he talks about it, it's just like he wants to do better at it. He wants to progress at it, but it is obviously causing him stress. It is causing him, you know, X, Y, and Z, not problems, but obviously it's just something that bears on his mind heavily. It is a level of discomfort he has to go through because he's obviously putting, financial stakes on the line with things like that as well, where that worry of like, okay, if this crashes and burns, I stand to lose a lot of money here. But again, it's not leaning into the fear of it, rather your capability to be able to do it, like his own belief in himself that he's put enough time into this, he's learned enough about it, and he's, I suppose, rehearsed is the right word, maybe, I don't know, tried and tested these things over a long period of time, that he has the ability and confidence to push through that, even though there is always going to be that fear.
Mm.
So it
It's
is like,
stressful because you can invest in something and you don't know if it's going to go up or down. You obviously think because you've researched it, but it's uncomfortable and it's kind of like going through that uncomfortable period
hmm,
to make the gain.
hmm. And that's exactly, yeah, that's it. And he's not overly disclosive about it, like he doesn't give me the ins and outs of it, but at the minute he is sitting on a trade that he's waiting for, that could be basically not make or break, but it could set him up very nicely
Mm.
financially for the future. And obviously the stress that kind of lays on him because he stands to have to make a loss then as well if it doesn't work out. But it's the point coming back to, like you said, he's confident enough in his own ability now that he's tried and tested this theory over a long period of time, and now he's going to be able to lean into that. But there is obviously that fear of he's never done this kind of thing before, or like, and at least not at this scale. So again, it's totally different walk of life, but the same idea of the uncomfortable factor of it. Like I stand to be in a much more progressive position if I can just lean into this a little bit more, as opposed to, like I say, you can tuck and run and say, right, I've made some sort of return here. I'll pull out. That's fine. I've made a return, or they hold out for the long run and basically just hope and pray that it works out because you don't stand to make a massive loss.
Hold, literally hold.
Yeah, that's it. Like, and again, that's it's sort of, it's people like that who've come to me in the last year,
Mm.
and it's just it makes. Obviously, I've always enjoyed coaching, no matter what. I've always enjoyed doing that because I enjoy seeing people make progress and being able to be a part of that. But also, like, knowing that people can do that off their own backs, or at least trying to tell people that they can do that off their own backs. Like, I'm not doing the steps for you. I'm not eating the meals for you.
No.
You have to realize that a lot of people are far too humble like that, where they almost won't take the credit for doing it. So to be able to see those people who, like you said, are just grafting and are willing to put in that effort, it makes, again, not that I've never, or not that I've ever not enjoyed it, but there is times where I've had people who, they just come to you with these ridiculous problems every week,
Mm.
and it's like I'm trying my best here. I really am trying my best to help you, but there's people who just don't want to be helped either. Like there
And
really
there's
is
only
people out there.
so much you can do until somebody actually wants to do things for themselves and improve
Yeah,
themselves.
yeah,
You can what is it, lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
exactly,
It's got to be
exactly.
them
I
who
think
do it.
it's having a bit of humility as well is a huge thing. Like as a coach, to be able to say, right, I've done as much as I can for this person. Or the same goes if like someone comes to me who like you can when you're well versed in it, it's obviously quite easy to spot. But I've had people in the past, and shockingly enough, more so females than males who've come to me call a spade a spade. They have legitimate eating disorders. Okay. I'm not qualified to deal with that. And I have no problem saying that.
Mm.
If we get on a call and I've read the information that they're passing along and I hear what they're talking about, now I'm not going to turn around and say, you have an eating disorder, I can't help you. That's not what that person needs to hear. What I will often say is, I understand what you're trying to do here, but I'm not the person to help you. I'm not qualified enough to help you. So I'll send them somewhere else to someone who is qualified, who I know is qualified. And there's plenty of people out there, coaches on Instagram. I don't know them personally, but I know people who know them. And I will often I've sent numerous clients to different coaches who specialize in eating disorders and are qualified nutritionists and PhDs in psychology and things like that. Because it's just, I can't help you. And I'm going to, like, me taking you on is only going to make the problem worse.
Mm.
Do you know
And
what I mean?
that shows that you do it for the love of helping people, not just for the money.
But I think that's the point I was trying to get to more than
Mm.
anything else. It's like, I'll never take on someone who, like I said, I don't have the capabilities to help them,
Yeah.
you know. And again, there's a line with that. As I said, that's like a medical thing. That's something that
Yeah.
needs diagnosing versus people who just don't want to be helped. There is a big difference there. Do you know what I mean? I'll take on anybody. If anybody wants to do something positive and progressive for themselves
Yeah.
outside of something, like I said, like a medical area like that, like an eating disorder, I will
Mm.
take you on, no problem. But at the same time, I'm not going to turn around and say to someone, oh, you have an eating disorder. I can't help you. That's not
Yeah.
helping anybody. Do you know what I mean? I'll say, right, yeah, I understand what you're trying to do, but like I said, I'm not the person to help you. I just haven't
Yeah.
got the knowledge to help you. So that's something as well. Like I said, it just takes being a bit, having a bit of humility and saying, right, I'm not, I can't do this. I can't help you here. But it comes in spades, like different areas with people as well. Like I had Curtis who had prepped last year. That was the first person I've ever prepped. Like I prepped myself. Or not I've prepped myself, but I've sorry.
Were you scared? Not scared, scared's not the right word, but was it quite a daunting experience to do that for the first time?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. So like I've done a prep, right? I've been the athlete, but I've
Mm.
never been the coach prepping someone. So you have the prep scenario where there's the self-doubt for him. Am I going to be ready? Am I still fat at 10 weeks out? You know, is this, should I be doing this? You have him asking those questions. You have me then trying to reassure him, who there's times where I'm not even sure myself if I'm capable of doing this. And that's not from the point of view of not being able to push him. I don't know if I'm going to be able to produce the package that he's going to be happy with. Like, yes, he does the work, but he's following what I tell him to do. And he did that to an absolute T. Like, again, someone who wasn't sure, should I do a prep? I'll start a prep. No, I'll start a diet and then maybe turn it into a prep. And he just leaned into it like
Mm.
nothing I've ever seen. And it was his first legit diet. The only thing we'd ever done before that was like an 8 week tidy up. This was his first legit long term diet. It was like 24-week prep. But he leaned into it like nothing I've ever seen. Do you know what I mean? Like he just fully engulfed himself in it and loved every minute of it. Like didn't miss a gram of food, not a second of cardio. It was honestly, it was cool to be a part of. But there was points where I was like, you know, you look at referring out and like I said, having the humility to say, right, I don't know if I'm making the right decision here. So like there is people around me now, again, people I wouldn't have met if we didn't move here, right?
Yeah.
Like in our group chat, you have Ross Byrne, pro coach, Ryan Urkel, who was coaching me, incredibly intelligent individual. We've got Mike Geary, there's Joe Gann in there as well. Yemi, who's an Olympian. Okay. We've got Dara, another guy who's an incredible coach as well. Keen, who as well, I know very, very well. All these people, right? I was like, if I'm not sure about something, there's plenty of times where I put, pictures and this is where we're at and this is what I'm thinking of doing. And, am I making the right call here? So you kind of, like I said, you refer out where you ask the question because people like that have no problem telling you, yeah, that's a good, yeah, you're making the right decision here, or I think X, Y, and Z would be a better idea. But to have that reassurance as someone who was the first time prepping someone, I needed it as much as Curtis did. You know,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? Like it was like he was unsure of himself in the ability to be an athlete, but then me unsure of myself after like 5 years of coaching. like, can I actually do this? Because the most I've ever, pushed someone to be was just, as I said, like from a lifestyle perspective, do, 11, 12 week diet, get legit lean, get holiday ready, whatever it may be, but never in a prep scenario where there can be obviously 101 different factors come into play as well and things like that. So it's just kind of taking all of that on board. And like I said, if it was something that I wasn't sure about, or am I making the right decision here, like you get a bit of reassurance from the people around you and not just, not wing it more than anything else, because that's when it stands to crash and burn. But for me, like I said, that was something completely different for me. And there was this pressure of like, you know, he wasn't putting tons of pressure on himself, but he was obviously like, I want to look like I should be up there. And he
Mm.
did. He looked epic to be fair to him. He looked great. And I was like, I was trying to be subtle about it, but when he walked out, we did the PCA first timers in Hull in November, and he walked out with a group of lads. And I think about oh no, was he like second last to walk out? Maybe he was second last to walk out, I think. And there was me, one of my mates, Niall, and one of Curtis's friends in the crowd. And I'd say the like surrounding couple of rows were sick of us by the end of it. Because he walked out and I seen him after all these lads. I was like, yeah, fucking Andre. He looked epic. Like he was peeled. He was peeled like as well. And I was just like, right. That was a moment where I was like, okay, I can do that. But right up until he walked out on stage, I was terrified. Now I'll never tell him that ever. And
You will when this gets published.
I know. I was like, I'm not gonna tell him when this podcast is out either. But there was like right up until he walked out on stage, I was like, okay, yeah, he's on. Like, we did
But
this.
again, I think that just shows, doesn't it, that fear and pushing through it, and you can get those results. And I think
Yeah,
really for me, the takeaway for today is that people need to feel the fear. They need to go for it.
yeah, yeah.
Don't be afraid. Like you say, lean into it.
Mm.
Is there any advice, like a takeaway piece of advice that you want to kind of leave people with to take that on board? Because that would
I
be
think,
my fear and do it anyway.
yeah, that's exactly. I think that's the only way to put it, I suppose. Because, like I said earlier, it's you will always procrastinate
Yeah.
some form or another, and you probably reach this tipping point where you know this is the comfort zone, and
Yeah.
that's doing something different. So I think when you feel yourself kind of sitting there, you're sitting on the edge. That's the point where you have to kind of jump in head first
Yeah.
more than anything else. Look, you can't, people say don't procrastinate, just do. We're not wired like that. Very few of us are wired like that. And I think it is a skill you develop over time, obviously, to be able to do things. Like now, I'd be much more inclined to do something that I'm not comfortable doing and trying it than I would have been a couple of years ago because I've done so many things that push me out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm going to find a task for the three of us to do that makes us all uncomfortable so that we can share it with
yeah,
people just to order
training
it.
one rep in reserve.
Oh God.
That's
Okay,
an uncomfortable task for
I'll
me.
leave that for you to think of. I don't know what we can
Yeah,
do.
Yeah, I'll
that's
come
it.
up with something.
I
Leave a
will
rep in the tank. That's a challenge for me. No,
say I like if nothing changes, nothing changes. I like that like little phrase.
yeah, it is
And what
something
was
you
the
just
one
have to.
about the ball? Because I want to remember that. There's light at the end of the Tupperware.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. Just like at the end of the tough way. That's good.
Ever.
Yeah, but that's it. Like I said, there will be you'll always procrastinate no matter what. Nobody is ever going to jump headfirst into something, whether they think they are or not. Because you don't just wake up one morning and be like, right. Now, to be fair, actually, well, I say that I'm not being like some um, what's the word? I'm not trying to be virtuous, like, but when I was like 16 that time and I was that heavy, I wasn't waiting for Monday or I wasn't waiting for the start of the month. I remember it like will forever remember it. It was a Wednesday morning. I was getting ready for school and I was like, right, enough is enough. Like that's the only no, I've never ever had that moment ever again after that because that was a very different moment. Like having to make that change. But to the point being is like, as I said, nobody's ever gonna. You're always gonna think about something. You're always gonna think about doing it. But like I said, you reach that tipping point, you have to just lean to the discomfort side. Because if you don't do it then, you'll never do it.
Yeah.
You know.
And we would like to hear from anybody for, if they're listening to this and they've pushed themselves outside of their comfort zone or are going to within the next week or so, then please do let us know. So we would love to hear. And Kelsey, do you have I'm forgetting the shame.
Wrap it up. You're getting a bill for this thing at the end of the year.
Over and out.